Hello, my name is Luke Dolan. I'm a registered energy advisor with Natural Resources Canada. My company is Capital Home Energy. We are a small energy design firm located in Vancouver, and we work all around the province of British Columbia, primarily the Lower Mainland, Whistler, Squamish, Sunshine Coast, Vancouver Island. And I'm here today for the HAVAN Masterclass video series, and we're talking about high-performance homes. High-performance homes can basically be summed up in 4 words: comfortable, durable, healthy, efficient. Now, let me elaborate a little bit. Let's talk about comfort. Okay, comfort has to do with the design of the home. So simplicity of design, right-sized mechanical systems. So having your heating and cooling systems and ventilation systems designed properly for that house. These houses are much quieter to live in. Let's talk a little bit about durability. Durability is a huge aspect of a high-performance home. We talk about we're building these houses airtight, so it's airtight construction, and a lot of people think that the reason we're doing or building these homes for airtightness is to prevent heat loss and save energy, and that is a big component. However, a bigger component of airtightness is actually preventing warm, moist air from getting into our building assemblies, so our walls and our ceilings, essentially. So we're trying to prevent warm indoor air from getting into our walls and condensing and causing problems. So that's a huge piece of the whole durability part of a high-performance home. Healthy, the healthy aspect, especially coming out of the pandemic, health is at the top of everybody's mind. So when we talk about healthy home, we can look at airtight construction again, because we have an airtight house that prevents outside contaminants like smoke, pollen, bugs is a big one. So, for instance, where I live, we have a lot of ants. If you have an airtight house, that's potentially going to keep out bugs as well too. And along with this airtight construction, we have to make sure that we're ventilating properly. So we have balanced ventilation systems. So a high performance house is going to be airtight. It's going to have a balanced ventilation system. This balanced ventilation system that we see in high-performance homes are usually done through HRVs or ERVs. HRV is a heat recovery ventilation system, or an ERV, an energy recovery ventilation system. Typically on the West Coast, we see more HRVs. HRVs are pulling warm, moist air out of a house and replacing that air with fresh air from outside. And what happens is there's a heat exchange process, and that warm, moist air preheats the cold air coming into the house. It's very energy efficient. An ERV typically is very similar to an HRV. An ERV, an energy recovery ventilator, pulls that warm air out of the house, that warm, moist air, but the moisture part of that air actually gets returned back into the home. So in areas where low relative humidity levels can be an issue, so if the house is very dry, then you potentially might want to have an ERV to help return some of that moisture back into the house. So HRVs, ERVs, balanced ventilation systems, really important. You're going to see that in a high-performance house. And the healthy aspect of that, you're bringing in fresh, filtered air into the home, and you're pulling out that warm, stale air that maybe containing contaminants as well too. And last but not least, energy efficiency. So energy efficiency is a huge part of a high-performance house. We're talking about reduced energy bills. So you're going to have lower operating costs for the lifetime of that home with a high-performance house. So in a nutshell, high-performance homes are homes that are designed to provide fresh air. They're comfortable to live in. They're quieter. If you're living on a busy street corner, a high-performance home should be quieter than an average minimum code-built house. They're energy efficient. They're going to have higher resale value and an overall better experience. So let's expand a little bit more on high-performance homes. We have high-performance homes have higher insulation levels. They're going to have better windows than a minimum code-built house. They're airtight. However, they're going to have balanced ventilation systems. They are built using a term that we use in building science called house of a system concept. And house of a system concept is a system or a concept that allows us to not think of all of these different components in a house as separate. So we don't want to think about, okay, you've got your heating system, you've got insulation, you've got electrical plumbing. We want to take all that, put it together, and think about how all those different systems in the house interrelate. So how does air movement, heat movement, moisture movement, how do they all interrelate in that house, and how are they going to affect the overall homeowners and their comfort level? So high performance homes take into consideration the house of a system concept. Everything in that house impacts everything else. I said earlier, these homes sell quicker and for higher prices. It's important to note that high performance homes are also much more complex than a traditional sort of minimum code built house. So they take a lot more time to design and to plan. We really recommend building to a high performance level. High performance homes are the future. And in say 5-6 years, by 2032 or 2030, all homes in British Columbia are going to be built to a very high standard, and they will be considered high performance homes. So it's important to note that high performance homes, when we're building high performance homes, they are definitely more complex than your average minimum code built house. So a lot more planning has to take into effect during the design process. So we like to call that the integrated design process, or IDP. And IDP, we're trying to get as many of the players together of that build as we can. We're talking about the different trades. We want to get architects, engineers, homeowners potentially, your energy advisor, mechanical contractor to help right size that mechanical system, very important. So we're trying to get all of these people together at the very beginning of the project to design these houses. These houses are complex. We want to make sure we're avoiding unintended consequences. We're using that house of a system concept to help design this home. We want it to be comfortable, healthy, durable, and of course, energy efficient. We're going to be making decisions like what type of fuel system are you going to be using? Are you going to be using natural gas? Are you going to be using electricity? Where are you building? Are you building in a rural area? Are you building in the city? Do we have options for designing the home so we can pick up more solar gain? All sorts of things that we're going to be looking at, window orientation, etc., go into the integrated design process. So there's a lot of thought and a lot of process, a lot of pre-planning that goes into these high performance houses, especially at the beginning of the build. So because we want that build to run smoothly and we want to try to avoid those unintended consequences. Think of it like a vehicle. Vehicles nowadays are very complex. Gone are the days that you could just jump under the hood and fix something in a brand new car. I can't, change the oil in my truck. I used to do that with my old vehicles, and I used to actually quite enjoy it. But nowadays, anything that goes wrong with your car, you got to take it into the shop, and they got to plug it into a computer and run diagnostics. It's maybe not that complex with a new home, but they are complex. So you have to know how to run the systems in that house. And one of the things actually with a high performance house, and I might have just contradicted myself a little bit, but high performance homes there's more emphasis on the envelope, which means more insulation, air tightness, better windows, and less reliance on fancy, expensive mechanical systems, which is very interesting. So that's the way that the industry is moving. We're also moving towards more simplicity of design. So we'll see in the future less complex floor plans. And I know a lot of architects don't necessarily like that. However, you can make more square rectangle homes look pretty. So there's a number of different techniques that we can do that. So I think we're moving towards more simplicity of design, which is easier for trades on site. So it's easier to detail your air barrier, less materials being used in the building construction process. There's a lot of different things that have benefits when we're talking about simplicity in design. The way that we measure high performance homes is through energy modeling and on-site testing of these houses. The great thing about homes now in British Columbia, even minimum code-built houses, are all getting tested. So we're doing on-site actual air leakage testing. So we're doing blower door air leakage testing. Blower door is just a tool that we use to help depressurize a house. So we're doing a series of tests on the house, and we're trying to measure the home's overall air tightness. And we're typically doing that twice during the build. So we come in at mid-construction, the mid-construction phase, typically pre-drywall, before the drywall is installed. We'll come in and we'll do a detailed air leakage test where we're trying to get a reading to find out what the overall air tightness score of the house is. But we're also there to help the builder clean up any deficiencies through air leakage. So we're going to come in, we're going to pick the house apart, essentially what we do. So we bring in some really nice tools to help us identify air leakage issues in the home or drafty areas in that house. So we're using tools like infrared cameras. We're using theatrical smoke machines. So we can fill a house up with theatrical smoke and pressurize the house, and then go outside and see where the house is, or see where the smoke is escaping. And that can help us identify where any air leakage points are. So it's a great tool for builders to help not only just meet building code requirements, but they bring in a third party. Energy advisors are third party trades that come into that house, and they're helping the builder clean up any deficiencies before they end up putting on the drywall. Because once you put the drywall on, it's really challenging to identify any air leakage issues. And what a builder's also doing is they're reducing their callbacks. So we've been working with builders long before it was building code that you had to do an air leakage test, and builders were doing it on their own accord. And they were doing it because they saw the value in it. Not only did they see the value of bringing a third set of eyes into that build, they also saw the value of reducing their callbacks. So a lot of times, if you have a big hole or a gap or some issue behind the walls, you might be causing condensation, moisture issues. And a couple of years later, after the homeowners are going to be calling you up and saying, "Hey, I've got some mold and mildew showing up here." So one of the reasons doing an air leakage test is to help reduce your callbacks as a builder. So that's one way I like to chat with builders about, is saying, "Hey, reduce your callbacks." And not only that, builders are using it as a marketing tool too, because they're telling their clients that, "Hey, look, we're good builders, but we know we're good builders because we actually have our houses tested." So it's another way of validating your performance through third-party testing. So in Canada, for residential construction, we use the EnerGuide rating system to measure the energy efficiency of homes across Canada. This is run by Natural Resources Canada. We use a software called HOT 2000. HOT 2000 is a energy modeling software that's world renowned. It's known as one of the best and most accurate software available when it comes to measuring energy efficiency and heat loss in homes. This is done through energy modeling. What we do is, at the beginning of the project, essentially what we do is we're building the house in our energy modeling software. So we're taking all the information from the architectural plans, the structural plans, we're plugging that information into our modeling software. We're entering the amount of windows, window orientation, window performance values. We're putting in the mechanical systems. What's the fuel usage? So are you using natural gas, electricity? What type of fuels? What type of systems? If you're going to be using, a condensing gas, forced air furnace, on demand, hot water, whatever type of systems that you're going to be using, we plug that all into our energy modeling software, and essentially the modeling software spits out an energy rating. It's called an EnerGuide rating. It's a rating on how much energy that house potentially will use, because remember, we're still at design phase here, so the house is not built. So we can determine at the very beginning of the project how much energy that home is going to use, and we typically will have a target, so we know where we want to achieve for. If we're building a high performance house, obviously we want to use the least amount of energy as possible. That maybe fits into that budget as well too. So we can, through the energy modeling process, we can optimize systems, we can optimize insulation levels, we can find out what that sweet spot is. We can find out how much insulation do we want to put in the walls, how much insulation do we want to put in the attic, what are the window performance values going to be. Essentially what we do is we take away the guesswork at the beginning of that project. So we can really fine tune each particular house, and we can find out what that magic recipe is for that home. So what are the insulation R values going to be? What are the window U values, the performance ratings of those windows going to be? What is the air tightness score? What are the mechanical systems, the fuel systems, whether it's natural gas, electricity? What type of ventilation system are we going to be installing? Most likely it's going to be an HRV or an ERV. So essentially we're building the house in our energy modeling software, and we're able to help optimize that particular home. When I say optimize, what I mean is we're able to find the sweet spot of how much insulation we're going to be putting in the walls, how much insulation we're going to be putting in the ceilings and the floors. What are the window performance values? Are we doing double glazed windows? Are we doing triple glazed windows? What are the coatings on the windows? What are your mechanical systems? So how are you delivering that heat throughout that house? Are you going to have air conditioning? Are you going to be using a heat pump? What type of fuel? Are you using natural gas? All of this gets put into our modeling software, and then we can find that sweet spot. So the equipment that we're going to see in high performance homes, we use the term mechanical systems. Mechanical systems are your heating, hot water, domestic hot water, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. And maybe some other fans in the house. You might have makeup air fans, kitchen range hood fans, you have bathroom fans potentially. So these are all the equipment that we see in high performance homes, and they're going to be high performance equipment. So, if you're putting in a natural gas condensing furnace, the systems now are so efficient. I mean, we've got 96, 97, 98% efficient systems. And when I say 98% efficient, that means if you're producing 100% of energy from that furnace, you're only wasting 2%. So it's very efficient. Same with our domestic hot water systems nowadays. So there's lots of options. On the natural gas side of things, we've got natural gas condensing tankless systems that work really good. They're very popular. A lot of homeowners like them. They don't take up a lot of space in houses. So unlike a traditional sort of hot water tank, and a tankless system just hangs on the wall. So you can shrink that mechanical room a little bit. Then they're very efficient as well too. They're known as on-demand systems. It's not quite on demand, but it's pretty close. On demand just means that when you turn the tap on, you're going to have hot water relatively quick, and they're very energy efficient. So once again, they're up in that 98% category for efficiency. Of course, we've got high efficiency heat pumps nowadays. Most high efficiency homes are going to have air conditioning, and it's interesting to note that with a high performance house, one of the things that we're learning about high performance homes is, and this maybe is a downside, I'm not sure what you'd like to say, but we're definitely going to see more air conditioning. Because with a high performance home, remember, we're putting all this extra insulation, better windows, more airtight. But what that means is in the summertime, there's more retained heat in these houses. Okay, so design of the house is very important. Passive solar shading, window coatings, all takes into consideration the comfort levels in the summertime. But because of these internal gains are heat gains that the occupants give off, the heat gains that your refrigerator, your freezer would give off, any of your home office equipment that a lot of people have nowadays in their houses. We've got computers, printers, TVs, all these gadgets, they're all giving off heat. Hot water tank giving off heat. So we're definitely seeing more air conditioning being introduced in a high performance house. And with air conditioners, essentially, we're seeing heat pumps, because a heat pump is an air conditioner that works in reverse in the heating season. And they're very efficient, very efficient. So heat pumps, so you're definitely going to see a heat pump in a high performance house. And heat pumps can be combined with a natural gas boiler or a natural gas furnace. So we have hybrid systems that are both natural gas and electric, and that's very popular. We see that quite a bit in the industry. At the end of the day, we're just helping you reduce your need for energy to begin with. So the systems that you're going to be putting in your house, although they're high performance, they're complex systems, these systems are designed in a way that they're going to be designed to optimize for that specific house. When I mean optimize, I'm talking about having them sized correctly. And that's a very, very important piece of the puzzle with a high performance house. If you want that high performance home to operate properly, we have to make sure that we are right sizing the mechanical systems. There are problems with some of these high performance houses where we, on paper or in an energy model, we show this house is using very little energy, but in reality, the homeowners might be complaining with higher energy bills, and that potentially could be because the mechanical systems were not sized correctly. When I mean size, I don't mean physical size. I mean the output. So typically with heating systems, we're talking about BTUs. BTUs is an imperial term. Watts would be metric. So we're typically talking about BTU. So we want to make sure we're putting in a system that is right size for that particular house. Back in the day, we used to size mechanical systems. Oh, bigger is better was kind of the mentality. Those days are gone. Now we want to actually optimize for that particular house. So it's very important to be installing systems that are correctly sized for that house. If you put in a system that's sized too big, what'll happen is it might short cycle. So that furnace might come on, reach the desired temperature, turn off, and then come on, reach the desired temperature and turn off. It doesn't actually meet its capacity limits. And these systems are designed for that efficiency. So that 90% efficiency or 98% efficiency is only going to be achieved when that system is running at max capacity. So very important. Once again, we're trying to avoid unintended consequences. We're definitely going to see more heat pumps, primarily because of air conditioning, but also during the heating season as well. Heat pumps work great. These are all things that go into the high performance house. Last but not least, you essentially could be spending less money on the heating system because you're going to be investing more in the envelope. You're going to be putting more of that upfront capital cost when you're building a house into your windows, into your walls, into your ceiling, into the way the house is built, airtight construction. So therefore, less need for heat to begin with. So essentially, the systems should be cheaper to install. So if we're talking about an existing home and you're trying to make your home more energy efficient, you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, how do I make my home more energy efficient? The best place to start is get an energy evaluation. Have an energy advisor come in and get an energy evaluation done on the home. An energy advisor will look at all the different aspects of that house and help you put into perspective all the different potential upgrade options that you're thinking of doing. You might have it in your mind like, oh, I want to replace my hot water system, or I want to replace my windows. We will be able to come into your house and help you optimize and decide what's going to be the best bang for your buck when it comes to retrofits for that house. We might come in and say, actually, the windows they're not the greatest, but I think we would rather focus on air tightness, potentially replacing that old furnace with the new furnace, looking at maybe doing a heat pump. Where does it make sense in that house that we can add more insulation? We look in the attic. That's an easy win. Let's say you've only got 6 inches of insulation in your attic. Well, we want to get you up to 18 inches of insulation in that attic. That's an easy upgrade, relatively low cost. We're going to look for other areas that potentially we could upgrade in that home. There's going to be some upgrade options that might not be realistic. So we want to look at realistic goals for that house. Like one of the things that a lot of the times it's not really realistic is upgrading your wall insulation. So if you weren't planning on ripping down your drywall or ripping down your siding, and you've got an older house, 2x4 construction, you're pretty limited to what you can do there. So we're going to look at other areas. The attic, like I said earlier, easy win. We'll look at your crawl space potentially. If you have a crawl space or a basement, uninsulated basement, all throughout the Lower Mainland, we see a lot of houses, especially houses with crawl spaces or uninsulated basements that are just not insulated. They're not air sealed properly. A lot of homes might have insulation in the floor joists between the basement and the main living area. We want insulation on the walls, not on the floors. So whether it's a 2-foot crawl or an 8-foot basement, we still want to insulate the same. So we would want to airtight that particular area and insulate. So we want to look at areas that are going to be feasible to upgrade. And of course, I talked about windows. Windows are a tough one from a return on investment standpoint when it comes to energy efficiency, because windows are very expensive. However, there's lots of other reasons to replace your windows, not just for energy efficiency. Some of them might be resale value. of the house is huge. You know, when people are looking for homes, although energy efficiency is starting to creep into that top 10 list, windows are, I think, in that top 3 list of what homeowners are looking for when they're buying a new home. So windows definitely do help sell houses, and overall comfort. And you know, the overall comfort in the house, you know, you can't. It's hard to put a price on that. If you're living in that home, obviously you want to make that home more comfortable, and you want to make it more healthy as well too. So we would also look at making that house more airtight. And when we do that with existing homes, we want to be very careful about not making it too airtight. We're worried about unintended consequences. If we do make it tight, which is good, then we might have to introduce ventilation. So we want to think about potentially introducing ventilation. Maybe if we make it really airtight, we're going to talk to you about putting in an HRV system. If you got a very older house and you're going to make it more airtight, potentially you might not need to go the distance and put an HRV. Maybe we're just going to talk to you about doing exhaust-only ventilation. That might be bathroom fans and how much time per day you're going to be running those bathroom fans. So those are some of the ways of making, you know, an existing home more energy efficient. When we're talking about new houses, of course, if you're thinking about designing a new home, then once again, I'm going to say that you definitely want to contact an energy advisor very early in the process in the design phase, because the energy advisor is going to be able to give you a lot of really good input at the early design phase of that home. So even when you're doing schematic drawings, you want to get some energy efficiency input right off the bat, because it's going to help the timeline of that design process. It'll definitely help with iterations with your architect. So if you already have a plan set done and you give it to your energy advisor, the energy advisor comes back and wants you to do a whole bunch of changes, and then you have to take it back to your architect. They have to make a bunch of changes. This costs time, this costs money. So getting the team together really early when you're designing a house is very important. A couple quick things to think about when you're designing a high performance house. I talked about it in the earlier chapters. Simplicity of design. So less complex floor plans. So reduce the amount of corners in a house. So if you have a very complicated floor plan with lots of jogs and bump outs and bump ins, it's going to be expensive and it's going to be harder to achieve that target. The more closer to a box, the better. So simplicity of floor plans make a big difference. Windows. So we're talking high performance windows. Nowadays, you're going to be triple glazed windows. So nowadays, especially in the Lower Mainland, it's pretty much the norm to see triple glazed windows. You know, the price has definitely come down with window manufacturers, and that's generally what happens actually as a whole when these building codes come into effect, and they're asking for high performance levels in houses. Manufacturing typically catches up a few years later. So we're at that point now where windows prices are definitely coming down. So windows are a great investment. You know, at the end of the day, you don't want to be replacing your windows. You don't want to be replacing your air barrier. You don't want to be replacing insulation in that house. So you want to do it right the first time. The mechanical systems, you will end up replacing them. So mechanical systems you might only get 20, 25 years out of that furnace or that heat pump, and then you're going to replace it. So that's why we have that more focus on the envelope, less reliance on mechanical systems. You know, technology will improve, the systems are going to get better, and you're going to end up replacing them. However, like I said earlier, you don't want to be replacing those windows. You're not going to be replacing the air barrier, and you don't want to have to be updating that, the insulation in that house. So think of it, you're future-proofing your home when you're building a high-performance house. You're future-proofing that house. You're building in climate resilience. That's a big term that we hear a lot these days, is climate resilience. You're protecting that home from the elements. I mean, the number one thing when building a house is protecting the home from the elements. That's water, snow, moisture. And then we start looking at, you know, air tightness, vapor control, etc. But if you just think about investing in the envelope, you're on the right track. Let's talk about the step code a little bit here. So the BC Energy step code is a building code that was introduced in the fall of 2017 and enforced January 1st, 2018. And here we are in 2023. So we've had over 5 years of the STEP code in British Columbia. The STEP code is has been a voluntary building code that local municipalities can adopt, and a large number of them have adopted this building code. So it's a pathway that builders use to navigate through the building code. And it's a tiered energy code. So there's 5 steps to the STEP code. We have step 1, which is basically you're building to a minimum code standard. And let me back up just a second here. The STEP code is also a performance-based energy code. So performance means that all homes are tested and energy modeled. So in the past, our building code has been very prescriptive, meaning that you just have to meet targets set forth in the building code. There's no actual testing or requirements that you have to meet. So the STEP code is a total game changer because now all homes in BC have to get tested and they have to meet certain levels. So there's 5 steps to the STEP code. We have step 1, minimum code built house. That's all you're doing is proving that you're meeting to minimum code standards. There's step 2. Step 2 uses 10% less energy than a minimum code built house. There's step 3. Step 3 house would be a house that's using 20% less energy than a minimum code built house. Those are the lower steps. The higher steps are step 4 and 5. Step 4 is about 40% less energy than a minimum code built house. Step 5 is the top tier of the STEP code. It's where the province has said by 2032 that all homes in BC will be built to a step 5 level. And a step 5 home is essentially a house that uses, it could be 70% less energy than a minimum code built house. Step 5 is the target for 2032. The benefits of the STEP code to the average person who's buying a house, of course, is that they have the comfort and assurance now that the homes have actually been tested. So they've actually been tested, they've been air tightness tested, and they've been energy modeled. So I'll use the car analogy that I use in the previous chapters. When you're buying a car, you know what the fuel economy of that car is. Up until now, when you're buying a home, which is the largest purchase of your life, you don't really know what the fuel economy of that house is going to be. Like, what are the operating costs going to be? What are utility bills going to be? You're sort of just hoping that it's going to be okay, right? So now, before you buy the house, you can actually ask to see to see the STEP code documents. The houses all get an EnerGuide rating. I talked about EnerGuide earlier in the previous chapters. EnerGuide is a rating system. It's run across the country. It's how we measure the energy efficiency of homes. So the home has an EnerGuide rating. It's built to a certain standard. The benefits, not only will you know the fuel economy of that home before buying it, a number of different things. So higher resale value, home comfort, healthy, durable, energy efficient. We talked about that in chapter 1, the reasons you're building a high performance house. So the end user essentially has that knowledge that house is going to be that comfortable, healthy, safe, durable, low operating cost home. So we often get asked, do you have to give up comfort to live in a more efficient home? Absolutely not. In fact, the opposite will happen. In a more energy efficient home or high performance home, if designed properly, will be ultimately more comfortable to live in. Remember, I talked about this earlier in chapter 1. High performance homes, 4 words: comfort, durability, health, energy efficiency. So high performance home, you have lots of choices. You definitely do not have to give up any comfort. In fact, they'll be more comfortable to live in. They're going to have a higher resale value, and that health and comfortable aspect of that home is extremely important, and low utility bills as well too. So that's going to be important, especially as we move into the future here. Remember, by 2032, all homes in BC will be built to a step 5 level or a net zero ready standard. Net zero homes are homes that produce as much on-site renewable energy as they consume on an annual basis. A net zero ready house is a house that is built to a net zero standard. It's been built to that standard. It's met certain energy requirements, certain air tightness requirements, and it just doesn't have the renewable energy installed yet, which is nice because it gives homeowners a little bit of flexibility too. So they've built that house, they've prepared so that that particular home has enough room on that roof, let's say, to install a solar panel system. So that solar system will be able to pick up the entire energy consumption of that entire home. So that's essentially where we're heading by 2032. So if you're not building a high performance home now, or if you're not building to the higher levels of the step code, you're building a home of the past. We want you building a home of the future. And I talked about future proofing your house earlier, and it's very important. As utility costs go up, we want to make sure that that house is not going to be, breaking the budget. And we want to make sure that that house is going to be climate resilient for the future. So when is the best time to do upgrades to your house? Well, what do the Chinese say when it comes to planting a tree? They say 20 years ago is the best time to plant a tree. And what's the second best time to plant a tree? Is now. The home is the number one investment in your life. You're raising your family there. For resale value as well too, it's a big investment. And it makes sense on so many levels. Health, remember, healthy, comfortable, durable, and of course, energy efficient homes are the way of the future. And that's what we're trying to educate our builders and push our builder community to be building these high performance houses. Thank you.